Welcome to the Spiritual Lit meeting. Each week we are honored to host powerful speakers from around the world, sharing their stories, experiences, and hope with us. All of our speakers are recorded and shared through our Spiritual Lit YouTube channel, so the message can reach those who need it. If you're listening to this recording and you're struggling, seeking help, or simply have a question, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can contact us anytime at spirituallit24@gmail.com, and we promise to get back to you. Tonight, we've invited Edwina and John to share their experience on the topic walking through loss in recovery for the next about 50 minutes. After that, the meeting will be open for sharing back. Edwina and John, we will give you a sign 10 minutes before the time's up. Also, you'll have a timer. Thanks so much for making the time and coming to share on this meeting. I know you both personally. Edwina, you meant a lot in my recovery when I began my last round. And John, I know you did a lot for CA Netherlands. So I'm very honored to have you both on this meeting. And with that, I'll hand it over to Edwina because I think she's going to start first, right?
Well, actually, John is going to start first, but I might just take a minute just because myself and John, hi everybody, my name is Edwina and I'm a very grateful addict and alcoholic. It's great to be here. We had a call today and had a text yesterday to say, well, we make a plan. And thankfully, John is on the same path as I, which is like, let's just turn up and see what God has in store and share our hearts, So, the topic is loss in recovery. And, if you're only new around and may not have experienced that yet, one of the gifts of being in recovery as a while is you're going to, because that's life on life's terms. We've all experienced losses and we all will experience losses. And, it's lovely that John and I are doing this workshop together, and he might talk a little bit about that, but we've done a workshop last year together and we've just been really good spiritual friends these past few years since we've met. So we've both shared losses of our marriage in recovery, losses of our mothers in recovery, losses of our brothers and sisters all in recovery. And with Cocaine Anonymous and God, we've got to walk through that very gracefully. And carried really through it, But if you're new in here, or, it's not all doom and gloom. There's lots of losses that have to happen for recovery to happen, and I hope that that's what will come true as well tonight, the loss of the old self and the ego and all those other things that we have to lose to come in. So, just John's going to speak first and I'll come in then after him. And, we're just very grateful to be here. So thanks for having us.
Thank you, Edwina. My name is John. I am an addict, and I'm a truly grateful member of Cocaine Anonymous. And thanks for this introduction, Nick. Thanks for this meeting, and all of you involved in this meeting. Thanks a lot for this. Wow, yeah, walking through loss and recovery. Was just meditating, and what came in my heart is that before I came to CA, I never took responsible for anything in my life. My oldest son, who's now 36, I've never been a father for him. My youngest son, when he was born, I was in prison. The first 3 years of his life, I was in prison. I miss birthday parties. I miss Mother's Day. I miss Father's Day. I never take any responsibility. But when alcohol and drugs has brought me on my knees, I went to a 12-step clinic, and from this clinic we had to go to meetings, and then I met people like yourselves, and they told me what I should do, work with a sponsor on the steps, but they also were talking about service, and I was still in the treatment center, but I heard so much about service, I wanted the service. Give me service, please, give me service. They said service keeps you clean, so I need this. And I remember my first CA meeting on a Tuesday evening. I came Monday from the treatment center, and on Tuesday I went to the meeting. And they said, we need somebody to take care of the key. I said, the key? What can I do? But you have to be the first one in and open the door, and you have to be the last one out and close the door. I said, I can do that. But in my last week of my using and drinking, I lost my job, so I don't have a job. But in the future, I'll be working again. So we need a spare key for the times that I cannot make it here. And then one of the people, the guys who were longer in than I was, and who was now a very dear friend to me, he just nodded his head. He said, John, just be here. And I haven't missed a meeting. I had this key for 6 months, and I just never skipped a meeting. I was always there. And from there on, I progressed in my service. And because of this service, I've learned what taking responsibility. I learned how to do that. And everything that I learned in CA in my service, I could bring to my normal life. I could bring to my family. I could bring to my loved ones. And this was a very vital part of walking through all this loss, because I take responsibility. And if I start on that, in November, exactly 1 year ago, my brother was already a couple of years before diagnosed with lung cancer. And last year in November, they told him that there was nothing they could do for him anymore, and that he got maximum 1 year to live. And from that moment on, I spent a lot of time with my brother. I was there every week. I came twice a week, and we even in January we came together. He has 2 sons. I got 2 sons. So we went a weekend away, and with his sons and my sons, and we had a beautiful weekend filled with love and laughter and tears, and it's just a memory that I will never forget. And from that moment on, he deteriorated, and he got worse, and he got worse, and he was homebound, and he was laying in his bed, and I just showed up. I was always there for him. And there was one thing that he really wanted to do. He had a bucket list, and one of the last things he wanted to do, but wasn't able to do, was to go on his boat together with me. And then there came a day, it was a really good day, there was an area meeting, but he phoned me up, John, I'm okay, shall we go on the boat? So I skipped this area meeting, and I went with my brother on his boat, and we had the best day. We had so much love and so much laughter. And after that, he was so tired, and he deteriorated very quickly. And 12th of May this year, he died. And these last days, every single day I spent on his bed, next to his bed. And I said, Ed, I don't know what to say. He said, me neither. I said, but I'm so grateful that I get to be with you this time. He said, yes, I'm grateful too that you're here. And this last morning, because he did euthanasia, and this last morning we were sitting together. I said, I know you don't have anything with God or spirituality, but imagine there is something. So then in a few hours, you're going to meet Papa. And he said, yeah, that would be nice. And I just hold his hands, and I was sitting next to him. And a couple of hours later, he died while I was holding his hands. His sons were there, his wife was there, my mother was there. And it sounds crazy, but it was a really loving period in my life. There was so much love between our family. It brought our family together. And Edwina will tell later about a spiritual experience she had with her sister, or maybe she will tell it, I don't know. But I was looking for that experience, and I didn't have the same experience. My spiritual experience came a few days later, because the funeral was on a Friday, 4 days later. And there were on the funeral 3 songs played, and I've sent it to my friend Edwina. And when I came home after the funeral, I went to a meeting. And then I came home and think, okay, now it's enough. It's apple pie and Netflix. And Edwina texted me. She said, see, I'm going to listen to your brother's songs. So I went in the garden. I was listening to my songs. And for the first time since my brother died, I cried my eyes out. And when I was crying my eyes out, I had a candle. And when the songs were finished, I started praying. And then suddenly there came a wind. It was so hard for 5 seconds. And I think, oh, yeah, the weather's going to change. But the weather didn't change. It was just 5 seconds, very, very strong wind. And I thought, is this it? and it gave me a lot of peace and calmness. And then on Monday, I went to work, and it was a sunny day. And I came home, and I was hosing my garden. And then I was thinking about my brother. And while the sky was blue, again, this 5 seconds of wind came again. And I was confident it was my brother was saying, it's okay, you can let me go. and that gave me so much peace that the next day I went to work, and I was, for the first time in many weeks, I was happy again, and I was just telling everybody about my brother. And the same when he had his birthday on 16th of September, I had a spiritual experience. I'm fortunate to have like a little hot tub in my garden. I use this as meditation and prayer, and I had a spiritual moment also in this hot tub. And then it was my brother's birthday, but I wasn't sad. I went out, I went to work, and everybody I met that day, I told a story about my brother. Because on his deathbed, I promised that I will keep talking about him until the day I leave this earth. And he said, yeah, kid, let's do that. So I keep that promise, and on his birthday, I do it a little bit extra. I tell a lot of stories about my brother. So if you ever meet me, you bet your ass I will be telling a story about my brother. There's a lot of funny ones. And like I said, it brought our families together. I grew a little bit closer with his sons. And last Sunday, not Sunday, a week ago, my mother passed away. She was 83. She was, her body and her mind was finished. She had a little, not a little, she had a big blow from losing her son in May. And I got a phone call on Friday. She was living in a care home that she had trouble breathing, but the people there were not allowed to call me because I was going to go away for the weekend. But they did anyway. But I was away, and I said to my brother's son, if something's changed, just call me. And on Saturday, something changed. The doctor called me and said it was bad, that she was uncomfortable, and that they gave her some morphine. And I raced to the care home, and I spent the last hours with her. I was holding her hands and talking to her while she was sleeping. In a couple of hours, she passed away. But what Cocaine Anonymous did for me, and finding a God in my life, is that I was responsible. She'd been 2 years in a care home, and in these 2 years, I went to visit her every single week. Every single week, I went to my mother. It was a long drive. She wanted to live close to my brother, but I haven't missed a week. And I was also thinking, before she went to the care home, she wasn't doing so well in her own house. And I was always there. I was cooking her dinner. I was doing her shopping, mowing her grass, whatever. I was always there because my mother has always been there for me. I've been a troublemaker before I came to CA. I've been in a lot of prisons. I did a lot of stupid things. My mother always forgave me on the spot and was always there for me. And now I get to be there for my mother. And the best part was that I met a friend in recovery, and he was from Turkey. He is from Turkey. And I said to my friend, I said, is it possible you can arrange a nurse for my mother in Turkey? Because my mother really wants to go on a holiday, but she needs a nurse 2 times a day. And this guy said, no problem, Johnny, I will fix that. And he took care of that, and he got us an apartment and with a nurse. And me and my mother took a wheelchair, and we went to fly to Turkey. And it was like, where he lives is not a touristic place, so they only fly airplanes in the middle of the night. While my mother goes to bed at 7 o'clock in the evening, we had to be flying at 3 or 4 o'clock. She was so tired, but the smile was on her face from here to Tokyo. And this whole week she was so happy being on this holiday. We had such beautiful moments. And I've shared this before, because she had a urine bag, and I've been helping my mother. I put her to the shower, I put her to bed, and I was changing this urine bag. And while I was changing this urine bag, there came a little bit urine on my hand. And my mother was looking at me and she said, this must be a terrible job, John. I said, well, Mama, with all the things you did for me, I need to change a lot of urine bags to even break even with you. So don't worry about it. And in these losses, what did I do? You know, I stopped, or I cut down on my work that I get paid for. I did a little bit less work, and I went to work with a lot of newcomers, and took people to the steps and took a little bit more, not a little bit, a lot more time for praying and meditation, because I needed this conscious contact with God as I understand it. Because this is what got me through all these difficult times in the fellowship. And it's amazing this last week how much phone calls I got from the fellowship, how many texts I got, and how people show up and there for me. On Friday, last Friday on the funeral, my sponsor was there. Some really, really good friends were there. And I wrote a speech. I was praying and I wrote a speech, and I really wanted to say these things that I wanted to say. And of course, it's okay to cry, but I really wanted to say this speech. And my sponsor and good friends were sitting in the corner. And just before I started speaking, I was looking at them. And just this contact with them gave me so much power that I was able to tell my speech without breaking in tears. I had time enough to do that. So I'm so grateful that I get to be a sober member of Cocaine Anonymous and get to experience all this love and these difficult things. And in between these two losses I had, when my brother died, I had some time to look at my life. Am I happy in my life right now? Am I okay? And I found out that I wasn't so happy in my marriage. And I started talking with my wife, and my wife wasn't so happy with our marriage. And we took a couple of weeks to make inventory and think about it, talk about it. And a couple of weeks ago, we decided to have a divorce. But in the most loving way. There is no drama. There is no resentments. We ended our last conversation with telling each other how grateful we are that our paths have crossed, and that it's now time to grow a little bit further without each other. And this is just a miracle that only for me can happen in recovery, because normally my breakups end up with me sitting in the hospital and with all kinds of things and monitoring me or me breaking stuff. Now I said, thank you for being in my life. It's just, I'm not sure how I'm on time, but I think it's time to hand it over to Edwina.
Thank you, John. Gorgeous. I was just thinking, John's story is a lot more gracious than mine. If only my divorce was so civil, and it wasn't my poor ex-husband that was the messy one. It was me. But no, look, it's beautiful hearing you, John. And hey, everybody, my name is Edwina, and I'm very, very grateful addict and alcoholic. And I was kind of like dreading the topic of this conversation, as well as, doing it not for my own self, but for the people having to listen. But that's me with my codependency, worrying about what everybody else is going to be. But look, like I said, life on life's terms happens, and it's one of the absolute pleasures. I really have got to walk through some stuff that have God or if somebody had told me, when I come into recovery with a terrifying drug addiction and an alcohol problem, that I'd be able to get through these things with a bit of dignity and a bit of grace and some integrity and courage and all of the beautiful principles we start to apply to our life from this program, I wouldn't have believed them. I really would not have believed it. And just to touch on John's story, like John's mum's not even 2 weeks past, you know what I mean? And he's the courage to be able to come on here and share that story with everybody else, and that's a pure demonstration of the power and the program and what's really on offer around here. And it's really lovely. And like I said at the start, I too have had serious loss in this last year and throughout my whole recovery. And one of them was my own mother, who passed away not even a year ago as well. And it's funny, like trying to describe grief to even my family members when you're in this kind of way of living. And my friend Louis is on tonight, and I remember him ringing me during the time after my mum had died, because obviously it's members that get us through these difficult times. Other people just want to say stuff to fix you and make you feel better, but members can be very real with you. And I remember Louis ringing me, and I didn't have the vocabulary that I wanted to express, and he said to me, it's sacred. And that's exactly what going through the griefs I have went through in my recovery have been. In that moment when somebody dies that's very close with you and you're in recovery, it's such a sacred space because somebody like me who knows that no human power can relieve me of this, only God. And when you're in that kind of pain and loss and your back's against the wall and you realize it's really only God we all have, it's such a sacred space and beautiful, if you like. I nearly hate to say that word because it's such a sad thing as well, but to be really part of it and to be really present to it has been absolutely one of the gifts of my journey in my life. So much so, right, that in the last while I'm thinking of changing my career to do something in maybe palliative care or chaplain or something like that, because I've got to bear witness a good few passings in my recovery, and I have found them really beautiful to be part of. And just to touch on even my own sister's passing, like, and John and I are very close and we're very good friendship, and we share a lot of similar things. And like John was saying, and I'm not going to get into the big story of it, but when my sister passed away, I happened to be lying beside her in the bed, and she was in and out of the consciousness. And I remember she was an alcoholic, by the way, and she had liver failure. She was only 39 years of age. She was my second sister to die at 39 from this illness, and she had liver failure. So I watched her waste away for a few weeks in the bed. I don't know if anyone's actually ever seen anybody die from alcohol and liver disease. Like, it's a horrific death, and I got to bear witness, those few weeks of her coming to the end of her life, like, and being absolutely terrified to die. And it's one of the beautiful things that us recovering alcoholics get to have, is we really get to clear away the wreckage of our past that other people don't get the privilege of doing. I mean, when we come in, we're terrified of steps and sponsorship and doing a step 4 and a step 5. And it's actually the most rewarding, freeing thing we ever give ourselves. I ever gave myself. And seeing her in that state when she was dying, being terrified that she was going to go to hell. That's what she said to me. I'm afraid I'm going to go to hell, Edwina, for all the things I done in me drinking. She had done a prison sentence for killing somebody and taking somebody's life in an alcoholic argument, um, and I remember having a moment in that, going, the way we have a new perspective on things and God shows us a different perspective in situations. My perspective on that was, wow, how fucking lucky are we who get to come in and sit with another alcoholic or an addict and clear away the wreckage and talk about the shame and the harm we've caused and go out and make right our wrongs before our day comes. How privileged we actually are. So I got to walk that journey with her, and a lot happened in those very short 3 weeks of that. But the night she did pass away, I was lying in the bed beside her, and we were just listening to old childhood songs from The Sound of Music. Now, if she was in her consciousness, she'd be telling me to shut the fuck up and knock it off. But I was in me godly spirit and I was playing them, and I was making the room all nice and whatever. And she took 3 big deep breaths in. I don't know if anyone's ever seen someone pass. It's actually a really beautiful thing. And she went, and as she exhaled, I actually felt her spirit and her soul leave the body. It's just the most powerful thing I've ever got to have experienced in me life. And I called me ma or my sisters. They were in the other bedrooms, and I called them to come in. It was like 1 a.m, and they came in and they were, all upset and around my sister Tanya, and I just left the room. And it wasn't that I wasn't sad or anything. I just felt she's not here. That's not her soul, her spirit is gone somewhere else. And it was absolutely gorgeous to be so part of it and to be present to it and to know that this is the way it is. And that was probably the first biggest loss that in my marriage that I experienced in early recovery. I was 3 or 4 years in at the time. And from that moment to this, I've had a couple of more deaths. But for whatever reason, what that experience done to me was give me complete acceptance around death and people dying. And fast forward a couple of years, this time last year, my nephew got diagnosed with a brain tumor and he died at age 15. He was only 15. It was such a horrific time for us as a family for those few months trying to be around that. But when he did pass, there was no part of my thinking or my mind or my spirit that was like, why is this happening? This is unfair. It's like the 10th step promised. I had ceased fighting my ideas or the world or how it was, and had some sort of just acceptance around it. Like, I don't need to understand why this has happened. It's deeply sad and I'm heartbroken over it. but I accepted that as part of God's bigger plan in the world. And how can I be in this? How can I grieve in this with me family and turn up and show up, you know? And it's such a beautiful thing to have happened. And I know it's a very, like, I'm very grateful for that experience, because I know a lot of people can really suffer in those things. And when Caden, my little nephew, passed away, a few weeks before he died, his sister, she's next to me in age. I'm 43, she's 45. She's his mother. And she hadn't seen him for 9 years because she's a crack addict and has lived on the streets in Dublin for the last 9 years and cannot get a day clean. And when he was dying, we went to tell her that he was dying with the hope that that would get her into a detox to get clean. And it didn't work. And when he passed away, and I had to go and look for her in Dublin city centre to find her, to tell her that her boy had passed away. Like, it was a horrific thing to have to do. But when I done it, obviously she was devastated. She's one of us. It's her firstborn child. She hadn't seen him. You know, she loved her son. He loved his mother. He really wanted to see her when he was dying. But as we know, the disease of addiction is even stronger than one's maternal instincts. She couldn't get clean to see her boy. Like, and when I told her he had passed, like, I heard her howl from the pit of her stomach, as only a mother or father would do for their child. Like, John's mother dying of a broken heart a very short period of time after her son Edward died. And I remember telling Sabrina, please, like, just please turn up for the funeral tomorrow for your other children, to have their mum there, you know, or the funeral 2 days later. And she didn't turn up for the funeral because she wasn't able to leave the patch and where she scores crack cocaine every day. She was not able to turn up, you know, and that's what saddens me today. This disease of addiction and people living in it, and the powerlessness and not being able to get the grace that I have been so greatly picked up and been able to get through my recovery and through life with, you know. And when Caden died, I remember a few days before he died, maybe a week or two before, saying to him, like, what would you like to do for your 16th birthday? He was turning 16 in December. And he said, I don't really want to do anything. He was getting sick, you know, and he was like, I don't really want to do anything, Auntie Edwina. I just want to be down in me nanny's house with me nanny, that's my mother, and all of you. That's all I want for my 16th birthday. And lo and behold, 5 weeks later, when he turned 16, my mother passed away. And my mother was a young 63-year-old member of Alcoholics Anonymous who was she was only a young woman, like, and again, that was so deeply saddening. But yeah, I was somehow able to find the good and the God in that situation. And now, okay, we don't have me mum today, but Caden has her on his 16th birthday, just as he wished and just as he wanted. So although it was devastating for us, God and the new perspective and the new way of thinking and what really is on offer around here, when we really wholeheartedly hand ourselves and our life over, we can see the good and the God in every situation, you know. And I really took I can't think of the word I'm even looking for, but I really took solace in knowing that this is exactly the way it's supposed to be. It's not meant to be any other way but this way, you know. And again, even with other little passings and things that have happened throughout life since coming into recovery, there's never been that mode of like, why, God, why? You know, I also, in this last year, they were two big losses. I also had the same sponsor for the last 10 and a half years, and I had to move away from that relationship. That was just as big of a loss to me and a big of a heartache as me mum or our sibling passing away, because we get so attached and so, you know, part of and look up to and in awe of. And I'm so grateful for that woman, what she gave me in the last 10 years. And we still have a lot of love for each other, but we're just on different journeys in our recovery now. And we both have decided to, you know, she's doing one thing and I've decided to stay and do what I'm doing here, and I love this, and you know, and it's all, so that has been another transition. So this last year with those three big losses and my back's been up against the wall, it has been very fucking uncomfortable of a year, excuse my language. But all the time, through the uncomfortableness and the fucking cliches that I hate to hear, which is, you know, there's no pain, there's no spiritual growth unless you're through a bit of pain. If someone had said that to me in the last few months, would have given them a bang of my big book. But somewhere deep down inside me, I absolutely knew that this was all part of God's plan and part of Edwina's journey and part of the next phase of development in my own journey with God and in my own journey with life. And it has pushed me further and further and further into my reliance upon God. My reliance, I always thought, was 100% on God, but it's not, because I realised that I'm like every other human and we get attached to things and people. But when your back's against the wall, and when my back has been against the wall, I have had no other choice but to really lean closer into God and have less and less of the noise and more of the quiet time, you know. So even through all of this last year, I can see the good in all of it, you know. And there's one thing, like John, that I have never stopped doing through the losses is picked up the big book with women and opened my door. Even the days before my mother's funeral, the days of my nephews, the days of my sisters, I was doing shares, I was doing what John is doing, I was committing to me commitments, I was turning up because I know no other way. I came in here a chronic drug addict and alcoholic. I've been clean and sober for almost 12 years. You know, I know no other way to live in the world without turning up for recovery and doing the things that I do. Plus, it's the only thing that has ever given me true meaning to my life. It's the only thing that's ever given me true desire to want to get up and be part of the world and be part of life. And, you know, the whole miracle in it all is I've never wanted to pick up. And that's the real miracle. I've never once said it's a good idea to have a few drinks, or a few drinks have never even looked attractive to me in all of this. And that's the real miracle around here, that we get through no matter what life gives us. If we can place ourselves in God's hands, then anything we could have planned it's going to be better, because God has a bigger, better plan. And I just have to, you know, ride the storm and go through what I have to go through, like, you know. And when I was going through, when my mother passed away, I had two girls on the big book. Both of them were step 11 and step 12. And I remember saying to them, like, my mother lives a good 120 miles away from the little town I live in. So I was up in Dublin a good bit more. And I remember pausing there, meeting up with them for a week or two, like, you know. And like, God, I remember distinctly Lizzie saying, oh, God, you're going to put this to good use. What I'm going through now, I know you're going to put to good use. And within a couple of months, those two girls that I had on step work, both their mothers passed away. And it's like, it was a bit freaky, really, if we're being honest. The three of us were like, Jesus Christ, like, you know, but God had a bigger plan in place, because one's mother died within 6 or 7 weeks after my mum, and another one a month or two after that. And I just had them both like at that stage of their recovery. And it's like, God doesn't waste any pain that any of us are going through on anything. You know, we get to share, we get to be part of, we get to, you know, grow in this together. And I get to accept life on life's terms. I've ceased fighting it. I understand that we're all going to have losses. Everybody here today, no matter what stage of your life or your recovery you're at, you're going to bury somebody you love. You're going to lose maybe a job or a relationship, or like me, a marriage and a job in recovery. You know, I lost my job in recovery. I was in it for 12 years. And when COVID hit, I got made redundant, and I got so freaking comfortable in that job that I thought, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? But guess what? God had a bigger plan. I went and got a bloody degree at 40 years of age. Who'd have thought? I told myself I was dyslexic all my life. I failed any kind of leaving certs or exams, but who knew it was just because I was taking too much drugs and drink that I actually can read and write. You know what I mean? I went back and got a degree in psychotherapy and counselling, and now I'm working in the services, and I'm, you know, I'm actually love me work, like, you know. But at the time when I lost the job for that 24 hours, why me? Why would they do that to me? I'm a great employee. Da, 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 da. But as we know, God has a bigger plan in place. And if I can just trust what I'm going through in any given day, more will be revealed. You know, and that has been true. And it's easy to say that when you have a little bit of experience around recovery. But if you're new in here, the hope is that you will just get a little bit of hope from us, that there is another way how to live, that we don't have to live the way we have been living before. That if we can trust that God has turned up in my life and John's life, why not your life? Why not? You know, so look, I probably have gone on over my time as well, and I hope I made some sense, and I hope somebody got some hope from our talks tonight, that no matter what happens in life, it's going to be okay, you know. Thank you.
Yeah, John Eric again.
Yeah.
Thanks, Edwina. I remember the time with Caden that you put a message out for everyone to send letters to Caden, and that Caden loved so much traveling. So I make pictures of all my traveling and my experiences and sent it. And I thought it was such a loving, such a kind way to support Caden in his last days of his life. And that's the help that we give each other, you know. And that also made me think on last Sunday, my mother passed, and I was scheduled on Monday to go to a treatment center to share my experience. And I canceled my schedule except the treatment center. So I went to the treatment center and I was telling my story, and in the middle of my story, I said, oh, this is all fucking rubbish. And I shared what was really going on. And they were, wow. And I told them how power greater than I was myself that I call God got me through this, and the fellowship got me through this. And they said, and you're still sober? What the hell? Tell us more. And it's like fishing, like and I gave them my number, and I've been many times to a treatment center, and sometimes they call back, and usually they don't. But these guys, they all phoned me the next day. And one guy, I'll never forget, he phoned me the next day. He said, I have a very stupid question. I said, well, shoot. He said, how did you come to God? How did you do that? I said, this is the best question you could ever ask, because this is what it's all about in the Trust program. And we had a beautiful conversation, and we're still in contact now. It's just fantastic. And I also would like to touch on the things that we can do. But I'm still amazed about the things and the power that I have, if I have a power greater than myself, and the power of the fellowship. Like I said, the things that I could do with my mother on a holiday, you know, that I've been able to put her in the shower, that I bring her to the toilet, that there's things that I thought I could never do. And when my brother passed away, that he, me and his sons, we carried him in his coffin because he didn't want to be touched by anyone else. And we have closed the coffin. And it's such a big act of love that we could do. And then when my mother passed, me and my sons were there, and the coroner was there, and he said, we're going to put your mother now in the coffin. Shall we do it, or will you do it? So, well, we are experienced by this time, so we'll do it. And again, I felt so much love by carrying my mother in this coffin. It's just unbelievable that I could get to do these things. I'm so grateful for Cocaine Anonymous that, you know, today I had a friend with me the whole morning. We went on a bicycle, we did some book work, and it was a great time. My phone is ringing all of the time. And usually I skip some phone calls because I also have to work a little bit. I can't answer all the phone calls. But the debt I have to Cocaine Anonymous, I can never repay, but I will certainly try my utmost best to pay this debt back. So in this period of times, I will answer every fucking phone call. And if I can't answer, I will call back. Because if I can help anyone in this situation, I'm there for you. So I will answer all my phone calls that will. This guy told me, is it this every day this for you? I said, yeah, this is every day like this. But I love it. Yeah. So I love Cocaine Anonymous, and I love all of you guys here. Thank you for being here. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you. I love you.
John just reminded me about just before we hand it back over for the questions and answers, just reminded me about John's just so much more gracious than I. But when I touched on about my marriage breakup, when my marriage broke up before I come into recovery, and part of me coming into recovery, I thought I'd get my marriage back. And after being in recovery a couple of months and having done the program, I couldn't wait to go back to make amends, thinking, yay, you know, he's going to see how well I am, and him and the family and the children are going to be reassembled, and life is going to be wonderful again. And when I made me amend to him, he asked me a question, and I lied. So when I went back to my sponsor, she was like, but you're like, your amend means fuck all now. You know, the man knows the truth and he deserves to know the truth. And, you know, maybe you rushed into doing that, which I did, because you know how we love to make the sex conduct amends very quickly. You know, we can't wait to do those ones, right? And she said, give it another few months and then go back and make the amend. You know, when you're really ready to be face the truth and be honest about, you know, what you had done. And so I must have left it a couple of months and went back to make the amend. And we had been together 12 years and we had 2 young daughters. And so, you know, I had an idea in my head, and of course it didn't go that way. And when I went back to make the amend, instead of him asking me the question, which I was prepared to tell the truth with, he said, Edwina, I'm sorry, I can't come back. My partner is expecting a baby and I'm going to stay with her and stand by her. And I was absolutely devastated. I was so devastated, not even a year clean and sober. And I thought, oh my God. But thankfully, I was able to just, you know, not react in the moment. You know, I got upset and I started to cry. And he like said, Edwina, like, why couldn't you get clean and sober? Like, for all the years I was asking you, you know, and it's too late now, you know. And I remember being in that for the first few months going like, God, why didn't I do it? Why didn't I make the amend properly? Why didn't I tell the truth? Why, you know? And then you fast forward your life a little bit, and I realized God had such a bigger, different plan for me in place, you know. And although I was devastated that the family and the marriage never made it back together, now when I look back, what God had in store was so different. And I started to really throw myself into helping women, and my home became a sacred place for lots of women to come. And we'd no Cocaine Anonymous around us at the time, and we started to open up CA meetings, and they start mushrooming in our area. And we went from only having 25 meetings back then in Ireland to now having 153 meetings only, you know, 10 or 11 years later, because we have really mushroomed, especially our little area in Munster, like, you know. So at the time, it's devastating. Looking back, I see it's all part of God's plan. And now I'm engaged now recently to get remarried. And I'm, you know, I'm insane. So I'm giving it a second try. Like, you know, we give these things another go and try again. And I would hope that I have learned a little bit more. And just quickly to mention, when my nephew died, I had an argument with my mother after his funeral. And I didn't talk to my ma for a couple of weeks. And my dad had died from suicide, and I had had the same thing with my father. And I had for years the regret of fighting with my dad when he took his life. And a week before my mother died, she had a fall, and my sister rang me to say she'd had a fall, but she was fine, like, you know. And my soul was saying, you need to go and make things right with your mom, because I hadn't spoke to her for like 3 or 4 weeks. And I drove up to her house that night and got into her bed beside her. And I really believe this was God's grace and God giving me the power to do this, because me and my mother weren't very touchy and huggy. But I got into the bed beside her and told her that I was sorry and that I was wrong and how I behaved, that I was just sad over what had happened at Caden's funeral, and that I loved her and I made an amend to her. And that was the last time I saw her. She died 2 nights after that. But I am so grateful for the ability of being able to work the program and owning my wrongs when I need to own them, and going back and making amends quickly. Because had I had that same experience with my mother that I did with my dad, it'd been very different share here tonight, you know. So the program and following the principles and the steps and the daily actions and the inventory and all of that stuff, you know, serves a great purpose in my life. So I'll finish on that, but just to say that I'm so grateful for that part of the program. Thanks.